weeks since the latest release of Epstein files that implicates more names than I can even remember. I don't think I've seen the full list, and there have been some reports on sports world figures who have been tied to Jeffrey Epstein, and the biggest name, Steve Tisch, the Giants co-owner, film producer. Emails emerged a couple of weeks ago. The league dealt with it as best they could, or at least in the way that they wanted to, which I think consists of saying as little as possible, doing as little as possible, and waiting for the storm to blow over. And I think they thought maybe it had. There was reporting yesterday from the Wall Street Journal and The Athletic with more of the details about the communications. And even though Steve Tisch's statement that he issued 2 Fridays ago said he had a brief association with Jeffrey Epstein, the emails suggest it was anything but brief, and the emails were exchanged, and the relationship started after he had already served 13 months work release, registered as the highest level of sex offender, had been sued by multiple victims of his various proclivities. And I just think it's going to be harder and harder. I know that the vibe from those who were tied to Epstein, I think they think it's like other things where if you just stay quiet long enough, we will all move on to something else. People aren't moving on from this.
That's right.
And I don't think the NFL strategy of keep your head low and mouth shut is going to work here.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. And it's clear from looking at those emails and just reading about it that the portrait that Tisch tried to paint is not accurate. Like, if he said it was a brief association, let's take him at his word that it was a brief association. Well, in that association, there was enough that happened there. There was enough, problematic behavior from Epstein and from Tisch, allegedly, that makes you pause and makes you say, this is not what you want from an NFL co-owner. So I think the league will have to go back and do something. Look, you can't just say, well, we addressed that and we're moving on, because there's going to be even more. There's going to be, this is what's happening with the release of all these documents. As people comb through them and as people get tips, that's the other thing too. Sometimes it's just dutiful reporting. And other times it's people who say, hey, wait a minute, you missed something. Did you look at this one? And so as people get more tips, there will be more explosive revelations that the NFL will have to deal with. And people will say, well, why didn't you do this before? Why did you try to get this thing to go away? So I think the league is going to have to get in front of it now and address it. And I don't know what you do with an owner. It's not a player. It's not a coach. So we've seen owners suspended before. That's what happened with the late Jim Irsay. We've seen owners fined. You can't take a team away from them. So I don't know what the league will do and how the league will handle it, but it has to do more than, we'll just let the process play out. That's not going to be good enough.
Well, you can't take the team, but you can force them to sell. Jerry Richardson basically threw the keys onto the table when NDAs that had been signed by people who had settled claims made against him for workplace allegations, when that all hit the fan late 2017. And I still have a problem with people violating the terms of NDAs that are backed up by real money, that's part of what you bargained for. You settled your case and you agreed to an NDA, and then that got violated, and Jerry Richardson had to deal with the fallout of something that he had properly settled. That, in principle, bothers me. I'm not commenting on the behavior. It just bothers me that people don't keep their word, and they get paid for that word. But that resulted in Richardson walking away. Dan Snyder was ultimately brought down by investigation resulting from allegations of workplace misconduct. Of course, it wasn't until the owners thought maybe he was picking their pockets by creative accounting with the visiting team pool. That's what woke him up. And more on that in a second.
Took, too, Mike, how long it took for Snyder. It was years
right.
and years.
Well,
look,
part of it was, and I reported this 4 years ago, When Beth Wilkinson was initially hired to do the investigation into Daniel Snyder, she prepared a report, and the folks at 106.7 The Fan in D.C. somehow got their hands on a copy of it from Kinko's or something like that, like a copy got left behind. But she was prepared to recommend that he be forced to sell then. And it was only after something new came up and they brought in Mary Jo White that the end result was he needs to sell. And one of the new factors that emerged after Beth Wilkinson's investigation was that there was this allegation that they were moving around money to reduce what gets shared, because 40% of everything you make on your ticket sales goes into a pool that is shared by all teams. It's the visiting teams, but it's some weird, like, archaic, goofy thing. But they share 40% of all their ticket revenue. And he was allegedly, this was part of what was investigated, he was doing something to keep more of that money and keep it away from the 40% visiting team pool. Here's the key with Tisch, though. Because I think the league's position is, and I've seen that others are taking the position that if all he did was interact with Jeffrey Epstein to arrange liaisons with consenting adult females, it's no big deal. There's no crime committed. It's perfectly legitimate, happens all the time. And if we just focus on that, that's fine. But we've got these emails that are just kind of skeevy. They objectify women. Now, they're not in the same category, and they don't go to the same degree as the John Gruden emails did, but he was gone in a matter of days when those came out. And these emails from Tisch to Epstein are backed up by action. Like, Gruden was just firing off a bunch of wildly inappropriate emails to his friends and getting emails back. This wasn't part of some broader enterprise where there were actions occurring. And this, to me, I think is what cries out for the league to do something. If you look at the story in The Athletic, now they don't identify with 100% certainty that the person in question was Tisch. But the guy was a movie producer. And Epstein had connections to aspiring models and actresses who wanted to get connected with guys like Steve Tisch. And there's an account in there from one of these individuals who got connected with someone, possibly Tisch. They don't nail it down 100%, but if you read the article, it's like, it sure sounds like this is Tisch. Goes to a penthouse in New York City at a time when Tisch was spending $60,000 a month on rent for a 13th floor penthouse apartment.
Good reporting by The Athletic on that, by the way. Good reporting to follow, to match that up.
And Michael, it dawned on me last night. I mean, this is Harvey Weinstein stuff.
Yep.
So that's okay? If Steve Tisch was that guy referred to in that email, this is Harvey Weinstein type behavior, and I think the NFL's got an obligation. If it truly means when it says owners are held to a higher standard, it's got an obligation to bring him in and grill him. And truly grill him. Not just check boxes or I don't recall. No, truly interrogate him, truly get to the bottom of it. Because I think, and I made this point yesterday and I wrote it at PFT, there's language in the personal conduct policy that prohibits conduct that undermines or puts at risk the integrity of the NFL, NFL clubs, or NFL personnel. That's enough. If they what's out there already is enough. If the NFL wants to do it, they can say that this behavior by Steve Tisch associating with Jeffrey Epstein at a time when he knew or should have known what this guy's into, and we're all grown-ups here. We understand what was going on, what he was trying to do. There's enough there to come to the conclusion that if we truly hold owners to a higher standard, Steve Tisch engaged in conduct that undermines or puts at risk the integrity of the NFL, NFL clubs, or NFL personnel, period. So, but here's the thing, and this ties back to Snyder. Here's the weave again. They don't want to create a standard that may be applied to them. Snyder wasn't an issue until they thought he was picking their pockets. Then it became a problem. But they don't want, and I remember hearing about this at the time, there are other owners out there that don't want a standard to be created for one that could eventually be used against another. And now we, the untouchable oligarchs of America have to worry about some disgruntled person, someone who received an email, someone who may have something on me that can bring the whole house down.
It's an excellent point, Mike, which leads me to this. Maybe the NFL's position is quietly to the New York Giants, hey, we need you guys to handle this. We need to handle this in a way where you start to promote other people as voices of the New York Giants, as key ownership figures of the Giants. Steve Tisch can't be seen as a co-owner of the Giants. We can't do anything. We don't want to do anything that will maybe one day come back to bite us. But what you need to do is start to make some moves, some media moves where it's clear that Tisch maybe hasn't lost power, but maybe is not as involved in the day-to-day operations of the New York Giants as he used to be. I mean, that's one way to do it. If you don't want to punish him, but you want to do something, you kind of lessen his influence, lessen his profile with the Giants, and you have the Giants do it, so you don't have to do something that needs to be done. I can't think of any other way they could do it without somehow creating a policy that we can come back to. Because, Mike, we don't know who else is in the Epstein files, and we don't know what else is in there. What we do know is clearly the way Tisch described the relationship with Epstein is not accurate. That seems to be an untruth on his part. And as we get more information, it makes you wonder what else is there. And the other thing you mentioned, like Weinstein-like, not saying he is Harvey Weinstein, but one of the anecdotes in that story, that athletic story, was that allegedly maybe Tisch is alone with this model, and this model says, "Oh, wait a minute, what are we doing here?" And she ran out. She ran out of the penthouse and left him alone there because he was trying to make some things happen that she didn't expect to happen that night. So there's a lot there that needs to be investigated, and I just don't know how the NFL will handle it going forward.
Yeah, and again, it isn't 100% matched up to Tisch, but here's the key quote from the article, and this comes from the account that was given by a woman who was interviewed by Radio France 1 this month. And she says that she met with a producer, top floor of a building with a sprawling view of the city in 2013, an American producer. And public records show that Tisch had a $60,000 a month, 13-room penthouse. I said 13th floor earlier. No, 13-room penthouse in Trump Park Avenue, 2013. The producer asked what I hoped to make of my life. I told him about my plans. I could see he was watching me talk, but he wasn't truly listening. We sat down on a leather couch. A scream came down, and he showed me a bike race. I didn't really understand what I had to do with that story. Then he starts to put his hand on the inside of my thighs. I threw out my hand, and I said, no. He said to me, you're a very smart girl. I ran. I rushed to the elevator. I didn't even know how I got myself home. So there's enough right there that the NFL needs to, again, conduct that undermines the integrity of the NFL. Conduct that puts others at risk. I mean, this account, if it's true, it opens up some of the other potential bullet points in the personal conduct policy of prohibited conduct that could result in punishment. But so far, the vibe has been head low, mouth shut. We all have goldfish brains, and we're distracted by something else. But again, that hasn't worked with the Epstein files. As much as they try, they being anyone who would rather us talk about something else, as much as they try to run out the clock is not running out. The clock is going to keep ticking until the reckoning comes. So that's what the NFL has to factor in. And I think the best outcome, if they think there's a real problem here, And look, and this is what was said about Dan Snyder. He was forced to sell. Oh, he took an asset that he paid $800 million for and turned it into $6 billion. Steve Tisch sells this 45% involuntarily. He's going to make a huge return on his original investment. So if that's the worst case scenario, folks are probably facing or should face far greater consequences than turning an asset that they bought low into something that they sold incredibly high. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.